Hello, everyone. It's Nigel Seeley here, and it's Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. And for the final time at the US Open 2023, I am joined by our WTA tennis handicapper, Rory Jiwani. Rory, the last time we spoke, we were full of optimism, we were full of hope, aspirations, joy. We had two of the last six. One of them could make the final. We're here in the final, and neither of them got there. The final, Gauff against Sabalenka. How you feeling, mate?
Yeah, a little bit down. I have to admit. I mean, I stayed up to watch both of my outright picks in action, and Marketa Vondrousova just, injuries. She pulled out of the doubles with an elbow problem. She had a shoulder problem. She just couldn't serve properly against Madison Keys, and when she wasn't serving, she was in the match. But I think all four of those women's quarterfinals, one player went 5-love up in the first set in all four of them. It was very strange. But yeah, Vondrousova just, injuries. It didn't happen. And then last night, Karolina Muchova again, not helped by, she played Sorana Cirstea with, she had some strapping on her right sort of forearm, sort of wrist area. That became a full-on sleeve yesterday. First set, she just didn't turn up. It was almost embarrassing. And one of the things that she's so strong at is coming into the net and volleying. And that was just first set. It was just non-existent. She went 5-1 down. Then she picked up her game. Gauff fell apart. Muchova got it back on serve. 4-5 serving, and then she threw in the worst service game I think I've ever seen from a player. Gauff broke to love and won the set 6-4. Then Gauff held serve in the opening game in the second set, and then we had the protests, which for a tournament that's seen its fair share of incident, this was another one. And one of the protesters glued his feet to the floor, so the players had to go off for an hour. When they came back, thankfully, the tennis improved. It was much better standard after. But it was just very, very disappointing. That first set, Gauff played all right, but she hit 4 winners to 12 unforced errors. Muchova 3 winners to 16 unforced errors. And in the second set, Muchova had still made 20 unforced errors. It's just, you can't win a match winning, making that many unforced errors. One thing that was quite interesting, the quality did improve in the second set. Muchova picked up. She came into the net more, played a bit better, still wasn't brilliant at the net. In the penultimate, I think it was the penultimate rally of the match, but it was certainly in the deciding game, there was an amazing rally. It lasted 40 shots, which gives you some idea of the pace we're dealing with here. If it's anything like quick, you do not get a 40-shot rally. We got a 40-shot rally at the right of the business end. And very much slower courts in Gauff's favour. That certainly helped her. She wasn't brilliant yesterday. That's the thing, though. She really wasn't. But Muchova just was well below par. So, a disappointing end. So we had one in the quarters, one in the semis, and none in the final, sadly.
A couple of things to pick up from what you mentioned there. Do you think that the one-sided set has to do with the heat? People just sort of tanking it for the first set when if they go a double breakdown, thinking, okay, I need to sustain my energy for this set too, because the heat has played a huge part, especially in this second week of the championship.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Just in those matches, I've seen a couple of those quarterfinals, and just people who players just not turning up for the first few games. Could be down to, obviously during the day it's the heat, and in the evening it's more the humidity. A bit less heat, but the humidity's still high. It's hard to put your finger on it though. It was just bizarre. Even Cirstea, who had a great win in the previous round, just struggling. Ostapenko, knocking out Swiatek and then being bageled by Coco Gauff. There's been a lot of one-sided sets.
There was a lot of one-sided sets in the men's draw as well, in the quarterfinals as well. That's why I'm saying it. The men's side was very one-sided as well, especially the first set. And I think the heat is playing a big part here. Obviously, tie breaks and long matches, you need to be at fitness. And in the latter part of the week with the heat, unders bettors have been definitely cashing with this heat advantage. So I think a lot of that's to do with the heat. The weather is actually going to cool down for the weekend. It's going to be a bit of rain. It's still going to be humid, but it's still a lot cooler than what it was in the early part of this week. And if you look from the last 16 rounds onwards, and the men's and the women's draws, there wasn't many matches that really cashed over. We had that strange match last night with the Madison Keys game where she won the first set 6-love, and then Sabalenka won 7-6, 7-6, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I think unders betters have definitely been getting the money, and I put that down to the heat, because in the quarterfinals of a major, you would expect at least a 5-setters on the men's side or a very tight 3-set on the women's side. That hasn't been the case. So I think the heat is definitely a factor. The other thing I was going to say is, obviously when that first set was over, we had that protester. How did you get back to Madrid so quick? Because I knew you were trying to stop the match and get Mukova through by default. You were trying to. How did you unglue your feet back to Madrid on the plane very quickly?
Honestly, it felt like she needed an intervention of some sort in that first set. But it was weird because she went 5-1 down, and then suddenly she played a bit better, but then Gauff's level went right down. And it wasn't until after the interruption that, we saw both players play at something near their best, but it wasn't a good match. It was a really disappointing match. And as a Mukova fan, as I was going on about her for ages, but it was disappointing to see her not really produce. But Coco Gauff played well. She played the big points well in that second set. Obviously, she had the crowd behind her. She'll have that in the final. She is, I think I said at the beginning of the week, at the beginning of the fortnight, she is the form player, and she's backed that up. Now, can she do that against Aryna Sabalenka in the final? Is another question. A very different test. A big test for her. She's beaten Sabalenka. I think she's leading the head-to-head. We'll dive into that match a bit later. But you can't argue with what she's done. She's beaten some very good players. She's had dips. I mean, she lost a set to Elise Mertens. She's had 3 setters so far. She struggled a bit at times yesterday, but I think, and as well with Sabalenka, I don't think you can really argue that the two best players are in the final. I think it's fair enough.
I just think we need to just touch on, before we move on to the final, I think we need to touch on the weather conditions, because as we said, the first part of the week in New York has been sweltering hot, 33, 34 degrees, humidity very, very high. The rain is going to come in now for the remainder of the tournament and into next week. We don't care about next week, but the tournament up through, it's going to be a real wet. It's going to be thunder and lightning. So you are looking as though for the women's final, the roof will be closed, and the men's final and the men's semifinals today. Does that change your opinion of the court speed? Does that change your opinion on the factor of on the advantage? Because at the moment, I feel that the tournament has been slowed down the court specifically for Gauff in the women's draw, and to make it an Alcaraz v Djokovic final, which looks as though they're going to achieve on both sets. But with this rain coming in, does that favour Gauff, or do you think that favours Sabalenka?
I think it has to favour Sabalenka with the roof closed. Indoor, it's going to be a bit quicker. Those powerful powerful shots from the back of the court are going to be a bit more difficult to get back for Gauff. So I would say that favours Sabalenka certainly out of the two. I mean, having said that, Gauff's played pretty well. I know we kind of associate her with being a slower court player, but in Cincinnati and in Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. plays reasonably quick. She won both of those tournaments. So I wouldn't say it hinders Gauff particularly, but I'd say out of the two, it favours Sabalenka. So I don't think it's going to make a massive difference, but I think it will slightly favour Sabalenka having the roof closed.
Well, let's have a look at some of these odds. Now, these odds are available now with Bet Rivers. The women's final is on Saturday evening. Sabalenka is the favourite, -130 to win her second major this year after winning the Australian Open. Coco Gauff has been to a final before, but never won her first. The pressure's going to be on the young American. She's +110. The game spread here is 1.5. Sabalenka giving up 1.5 is -107. Gauff is +1.5, -114. And the total is 22.5 with over -103 and under the favourite at -120. As you said, Rory, they've met 5 times before. The head-to-head is 3-2 in favour of Gauff. But the only meeting this year was in Indian Wells in the quarterfinal, which Sabalenka Blew Gauff off court, 6-4, 6-love. But these are the two informed tennis players on the women's circuit currently. 11-0 on a recent run for Gauff and 9-1 for Sabalenka of her only defeat against Mukova in the semi-final of Cincinnati, a tournament which Gauff won. So these are the two informed players. Now, the thing about these two players, we all know they've got the talent. We all know they're extremely, Sabalenka's very powerful, lots of unforced errors. Gauff is probably, I would say, that the all-round better tennis player. But I think here both of them have temperament problems. So I think Sabalenka, we know she can have a wobble. We saw, not this year, she's been superb, but last year, in the middle of last season, she lost her way. The season before, she double faulted at big crucial points in big matches. Gauff already in this tournament was up against it in round one against Sigmund. She struggled against Merton. She struggled against Wozniacki. So this could possibly come down to a mental battle rather than a tennis game as well. And when you consider that Sabalenka has all that support against her in Gauff, is that going to be a positive or a negative for Gauff having that kind of support behind? That's another question. I mean, I know it's a silly question to say, really, because she's going to be a positive, but for a young girl like that, with all that pressure, we don't know whether she can handle it, and it's going to be a big occasion for that. So, do you think this could come down to a mental battle rather than a tennis battle as well?
I think so, yes, but I think in Sabalenka's favour. I mean, let's look back at last night's wild match against Madison Keys. Keys played absolutely lights out tennis in that first set. I mean, I think it was something like 16 winners to 5 unforced errors, or it was she played fantastically well. And there was, you mentioned about the double faults with Sabalenka last year. They reared their head in the first set. 12 winners to 5 unforced errors. It was Madison Keys' first set, and Sabalenka 3 winners to 12 unforced errors. So, Sabalenka not really, just wasn't at the races in the first set, but Keys did play very well and she served very well. Different story after that. I mean, Sabalenka found her game, up went the winner count, unforced error count a little bit lower. But, that's her game. She is going to have lots of unforced errors because she gives the ball an almighty whack. She's trying to hit lots of winners. Usually she's on the right side of the equation. Sabalenka, it was quite funny. I was reading one of the comments on Twitter, and a Twitter user, I think his Twitter handle's at Anna K Forever. I think it's a Russian guy called Oleg. And he tweeted that apparently during the second set, Sabalenka exclaimed to her sort of team, it's something along the lines of, "Oh, why is she playing like this in a semi-final? Because we know Sabalenka has an issue in semi-finals. Before last night, she'd lost 5 out of 6, and she was saying, "This is a joke. Why is she suddenly playing this well in a semi-final? I can't believe this." So I think for Sabalenka to get through that semi-final, having been bageled in the first set, I think that's massive. I think that's a huge plus for her. To come back in the way she did. And I think she celebrated early in the third set as well, thinking that because it's a 1-10 tiebreak in the third set. I think she celebrated when she hit 7 in the third set tiebreak, which I remember Danielle Collins doing against Mukova in the Australian Open as well. I think that's a big psychological thing for Sabalenka, and we know her record in slam finals. She's played one, she's won one at the Australian Open. Coco Gauff in her 1 Grand Slam final at the French Open a couple of years ago was marmalised by Iga Swiatek. Now, the head-to-heads, I think we can ignore the one from this season at Indian Wells. I mean, this is a very, very different Coco Gauff. Since she's linked up with Per Ribber and Brad Gilbert, you can see that the change in her game has been huge. She looks far more comfortable. She looks more aggressive. She's playing much, much better tennis. I think last year, or a couple of years ago, Gauff won in Rome in straight sets. That Indian Wells encounter this year was the only one-sided encounter out of the 5. The rest have been pretty close. It's very hard to see how this match is going to go because there are so many ways this match could go, just judging by what happened last night. I think Sabalenka, now she's got through that semi-final, I think she's just got a bit more. I think with the roof being closed, I just think there are small positives for Sabalenka. And last night she was against the crowd as well. You know, she dealt with it very well. And I think she said in the press conference, "Oh, I hope some of you support me in the final." No one's going to be supporting Sabalenka in the final. It doesn't really matter.
I will.
You will, yes, because you picked her at the start of the tournament. So, you know, I think she can handle that. She's been in this situation before. I think Sabalenka will win this, but you just never know if, you know, the pressure, if her serve starts faltering, it could go the other way. And Gauff has ups and downs as well. I mean, these are two players who have their fair share of ups and downs in a match, even in a set. So predicting what's going to happen, I think, is very difficult.
Well, there's 51 different markets available on the BetRivers website for you to have a little look over and see if you can find any value at all. We've spoke about a few of the main markets there, but I think this is going to be quite a nervy first set. I don't think anyone's going to blow anyone away. I think there could be a few errors. I think this could be a long match. Now, there's obviously different ways to go. You can bet the total games, over the total games, total sets, over 2.5 total sets at plus 135, which probably would interest me because I feel where this might go is I feel that if Gauff sees the winning line in sight, she could freeze. I could see her actually getting very tight. And the same with Sabalenka. I think she's had problems. I think double faults come in. I can see her getting very tight again with the New York crowd against her. And Gauff is, I know she did play well against Madison Keys, but Gauff is a different animal to Madison Keys in terms of the popularity, what they have out there. So I think both of them have got huge question marks over them in terms of their mental capacity. And I feel this could be a long match. I feel the total sets here at plus 135 could be a decent way because as we've seen already, some sets winning 6-love. I think that could be an interesting angle. And I think in set one, if you want to bet over 9.5 sets, I think the first set will be 9.5 games. Sorry, I think the first set will be very, very, very tight. That's how I see it going. I know you haven't got an official pick here, but you know you think it's quite difficult to call. You think that the odds are about right. What's your sort of way of thinking? Who are you leaning towards, and how do you see the match going?
I was just thinking that first set over 9.5 games might be a good one. I mean, I'm just looking at the previous matches. That would have cashed in 4 out of their 5 previous matches. The only time it wouldn't have was Ostrava indoors 2020, when actually, funnily enough, Gauff won the first set 6-1, and then Sabalenka won the next two 7-5, 7-6. But every other time that would have cashed over 9.5 games. I mean, mate, the first set could be deep. It's going to be nervy. But then Sabalenka was bageled in the first set last night. So it's you just don't know with these two. If I had to lean one way or the other, it would be Sabalenka for the reasons I've said. But it's just, we've seen the change in Gauff. You know, she just looks much more happy and just more competitive, confident. You know, she's attacking so much more. That forehand that everyone was saying was a massive weakness, I mean, it's still not great, don't get me wrong. And again, and in Mukova, you could see Mukova targeting that Gauff forehand repeatedly last night. And a lot, you know, it did break down at times. Other times, you know, it worked. So, you know, the forehand is better than it was. It's still a bit of a weakness, and I'm sure Sabalenka will try and target that. But all round, as you say, she's probably got she's got a better all-round game. She was very good at the net against Mukova. She won more points at the net than Mukova, which is, you know, almost unheard of anyone to have, you know, to get more points at the net than Mukova. Sabalenka's not bad at the net either, and Sabalenka can play a drop shot. So Sabalenka is, you know, she is all about power. She's, you know, she hits the ball incredibly hard. She does have subtlety to her game as well, and she can change it up. Not to the same extent as a Mukova, but, you know, Sabalenka is going to be going for winners predominantly, and if her radar's on, she'll almost certainly win. When Sabalenka's on her game, I don't think there's anyone that can stop her, you know, when she's hitting winners from all angles. You know, possibly someone like Ostapenko, or maybe a Rybakina. You know, you're looking at those big hitters, you know, once, you know, when they're in the zone, they're almost impossible to stop. So if Sabalenka's on her game, and there's no reason to think that she won't be, because, you know, although everything was going very smoothly until last night when, the wheels almost came off against Madison Keys. Now, maybe that was down to being the semi-final and the psychological element there. But I think she'll get her game back on. And I think Sabalenka will win 2 or 3 sets. I couldn't be sure. But I can see the angle for the first set being tight because there's going to be a lot of nerves out there.
Well, if we look at all the sets that they've played in the history of the 5 matches they played 13 sets in total. 10 of them have cashed over 9.5. And in 6 of them, it's cashed over 10.5. Now, this is arguably the biggest match it is the biggest match they've ever played. The pressure's on them both. The nerves are going to be, no one's going to go all out from the first bell, I don't think. I think it'll be cagey till it gets to about 3-3. And I tell them that might take a little bit of chances. So I think if you're looking at the stats and you take in the conditions and the match itself, I think that over 9.5 and over 10.5 first set does offer some value here. 10 out of 13 cashing over 9.5, 6 out of 13 cashing over 10.5. You can get really nice prices available on that. Also, if it's a long game, it brings in the double faults. Over 10.5 double faults in the final, -104, which does sound a lot. But when you consider that Sabalenka and Gauff serves can completely go under pressure, if we go into a long match in a over 2.5 set match, a 3-set match, that total double faults may be a little of a play as well at -104.
Could be. Yeah. We know that Sabalenka, when she's under pressure, does throw in a couple of double faults. I mean, she threw in a couple yesterday. I mean, she didn't actually serve that many. I think she only served 3 in the end yesterday. So it wasn't as many as I thought. Had 2 double faults yesterday. Not sure Gauff served any. She served 2 as well. So, but as you say, this is pressure-wise, this is a different level. So you'd expect to see. I still think that double fault count is high, but the funny one, actually, because I saw someone tipped up unders on service breaks between Keys and Sabalenka, and I thought that looked a really good bet. And then, of course, Keys and Sabalenka, 2 of the, the better servers on the tour. And obviously we had a bagel in the first set. We had a load of service breaks. So, I think this is a very hard match to predict. Very hard. I think the hardest so far. There's no... I don't really see an angle. I think, maybe the first set overs games would be the way to go. But
if you're not going to have a bet, Rory, I'm going to throw in a bet for us. I'm going to throw in an official bet. I'm going to go. I've done a little bit of maths here. I'm going to go for the first set and have half a unit. Well, have 1 unit on over 9.5 games at -113. 76% chance that in the matches they played, 13 sets, is cashed 76%. Which should be about a -$3 match. And I think given the final, I think -113 is a decent bet. And I'm going to have a half a unit on over 10.5 games at +265. That's a 46% chance that has happened. So that's about +125 in their matches. And given the final, given the match, both of them be nervy, both of them have got history of giving away cheap points and also hitting fantastic winners as well. I'm going to go for that. So I think the first set, we're going to take the first set to be tight. And why don't we just go all out for it? Why don't we have a half a point as well on the final set to be a tiebreak at +480? First set to be a tiebreak at +480. We might as well go out of our heights. We're going to go for 1 unit over 9.5 set 1, half a unit over 12.5. Sorry, over 10.5, and half a unit over 12.5 to get a tiebreak. So we've got all those sort of in our favour. So 9.5, 10.5, 12.5.
There we go.
That's it.
Yeah, it's why not? I mean, it's a tricky match, but I did look at that over 10.5 at +265. I saw that and thought that did look big, considering their history. Obviously, tie breaks are difficult to predict. I thought the 10.5 looked big compared to the over 9.5. But yeah,
there's been 3 tie breaks in their 13 sets as well, so that's value as well. We're getting the value. That's what we're doing. We're going over 9.5, over 10.5, over 12.5. We want the first set tie breaks. Cashed a lot. If we get 10 games, we lose tiny.
Even,
If we get 12, we're in the cash. That's what we're going. That's the plan. That's the plan of attack. So we're looking for a very tight first set. Rory has said it's a very, very hard game to call. And we put a poll up on our Twitter account at Because We Win. We're asking you who you think's going to win the women's single finals. You've got 17 hours, 32 minutes at the time of recording to cast your vote. And surprisingly, Rory, at the moment, 62% of people have gone for Sabalenka and 38% have gone for Gauff. Now, when you consider we are very heavily American populated, orientated, like people who follow us, that's our audience is very much American. 62% of you have gone for Sabalenka, 38% have gone for Gauff. Now, that relates in betting terms to 13.08 and 8 to 13. So that is plus 162 for Gauff and minus 162 for Sabalenka. So that would mean that the price on Sabalenka may minus 130 perhaps represent some value. But you've got some time to cast your vote on that. So give us a vote on that and let us know what you think about who you think will win. And obviously,
I'm surprised at that.
I thought it'd be a bit closer. I thought it'd be a bit closer. But I think we're recording this at 1 o'clock now. So I'm guessing that most of the American bettors will be waking up now. And I'm sure that Gauff would obviously. But that's got 17 hours yet. Currently, it's 68% and 32% in favour of Sabalenka. Remember, Bet Rivers have an offer. It's an in-play offer. This is your last chance now with the men's semi-finals and the men's finals. So you've got 3 last chances, one of your last chances. Place a bet in play up to $25 and you get 50% matched as a free bet for you later on in the competition. So make sure you capitalise on that offer that Bet Rivers have, where you get 50% of a bet in play at up to $25. And some of the in-play opportunities in this match will be better than ever. The in-play yesterday must have been crazy in the Keys match. Absolutely crazy. 6-love, 7-6, 7-6, game over. So interesting markets. It's a difficult match to end with, Rory. It really is. But I'm cheering Sabalenka. I did say at the start of the tournament, I did say when we've done the thing, I thought she was the professional each-way bet. I thought if you looked at the draw, given Świątek, Gauff, all those tough players in that bracket, I thought the bottom half of the draw, to get the each way play, to get plus 250 for her to get to the final, you've got it. I've actually bet a quite nice little position on her. Am I hedging?
Hedging's for gardeners. Yes,
exactly. No, I'm not hedging. I'm not hedging whatsoever. And so no hedging. If you've got the position, if you're already on this bet, so I wouldn't suggest hedging at all. Maybe in play. We see and get a bit of that offer as well. If you've got a nice position with hedging playing, also get a little bit of a bonus as well. So Rory, no official pick from you, but I'm going to go for the matches. But listen, thank you very much for your contributions and all your time over the US Open. It was a great start. We hit the highs with a brilliant first round. We stayed in profit for the tournament, but just the outrights let us down. 3 picks, get to the semi-finals, get to the quarterfinals, and the other one obviously bows out early on when she was in a great winning position as well. It wasn't to be on the futures market. But anyway, it's been fun. Enjoy your break off. There's no tennis next week, so enjoy your break off. I think it's in Davis Cup. I think so. We're having a week off next week after the US Open. So enjoy your break, and we'll be back with Rory in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, you can subscribe to this channel, the YouTube channel, or the podcast, whichever you download. Download this podcast on Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. You can download the podcast there on your preferred podcast provider. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is the Betting Weekly Studios. Thank you very much for everybody who has subscribed to that already. And on our social pages, on our Instagram, on our Twitter, we share the same handle, @BecauseWeWin. And on those pages there, you'll be able to cast your vote on who you think will win the women's singles. Will it be Coco Gauff, or will it be Aryna Sabalenka? We'll wait and see. Rory, thanks again. Take care. Enjoy your week off, and all the best to everybody. Take care.